Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Rethinking MES in Pharma, Faster Reviews, Better Data, Less Risk. My name is Gabriella, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. In this webinar, you'll get a first-hand look at composable manufacturing systems in practice, modular, flexible, and built to adapt. You'll see how leading pharmaceutical manufacturers are using a composable approach to cut costs, scale fast, and stay agile in an increasingly complex global market, all while maintaining critical compliance and quality standards. Now I'm excited to introduce our speakers. First up, we have Olivier Neron. As the global head of the life sciences practice at Tulip, Olivier leverages 28 years of dedicated experience in the life sciences industry. His expertise spans MES and L2, L3, L4 systems for enterprise clients, covering everything from clinical packaging to commercial manufacturing of small and large molecule APIs, OSD, parenteral, and ATMP. Olivier plays a pivotal role in shaping Tulip's solution architecture and guiding its development and technology. João Aido is a digital transformation expert with over 15 years of multifaceted experience, from leading operations in demanding regulated industries to architecting solutions for top-tier MES providers. His deep industry knowledge is supported by a comprehensive academic background in industrial engineering and business process management. Building on this foundation, Aido's current work as a senior PhD researcher concentrates on the human side of digital transformation, seeking to maximize technology adoption by harmonizing the dynamics between individuals and the organization at large. With that, I'll kick it over to Olivier to start the conversation.
Thanks, Gabby. So today on the agenda, it's going to be threefold. We're going to speak about the trends in MES, then we'll say a few words about composability, and we will define what that is in more details. And after that, we'll talk about some customer stories. And like Gabby mentioned, we'll keep the last section for some Q&As. So let's start with some trends. So what we see is basically a rapidly evolving MES landscape. Now, the good news is we're not the only ones to have that sentiment. So IDC, Gartner, Frost & Sullivan, and many others basically see the same things. So a rapidly transforming MES landscape. And this is because of very disruptive technology. I think a few years back, the cloud was considered, or the move to the cloud was considered transforming or disruptive technology. I think these days it's more about LLM and AI and Gen AI and agents. But at the end of the day, we have a fundamental technology shift. So the market is basically adapting and actually asking for such technology to be implemented. So let's start with a few words about composability. So composability basically is a design principle that let you construct a system or fulfill some requirements based on components. And those components can be combined or recombined anytime. So let's take an example. For instance, let's say you are in a site which is basically paper-based as of today, and you want to digitalize. So applying composability might be that your biggest problem today is to do IPC, so in process control. So you could build an app or a suite of apps to tackle IPC. If your next biggest problem is when dispense, you could download an app from the Tulip library that will do when dispense, or build your own, or adjust the one you downloaded to your special needs. And then after that, decides that the next biggest problem, quality says, and you don't want to argue with quality, is basically the reconciliation of the material that you have dispensed. Because if you're doing campaign weighing, for instance, you want to make sure that there is no mix-up between the dispensed materials for the different orders. So you could do that. If next you want to help logistics by having a replenishment app, then you could do that. And now you can recombine that app maybe with an app or an app suite that you have created for your packaging line. So this replenishment of the when dispense area will be used also in packaging. So this is at its heart what composability is about. What we see, which is pretty interesting, is composability might have been the exception in the past, but now it's turning into the expectations that our customers have. So that's the design principle. I would say that's pretty simple. I will let Aido elaborate on the supporting technology for achieving that goal. Aido.
Absolutely. And like you said, I believe it's fair to say that this is clearly a transformational change. And a key pillar of this transformational change is the move to the cloud. And as we know, this is not a new thing to the manufacturing space or the operations space. And in fact, there's been a trend throughout all industries for some time now. But I think that we're really starting to see this ramp up happening now. And if we look at what the analysts say, only 38% today of MES installations are in the cloud, but it is expected that by 2030, 75% of manufacturing companies will run their operations in the cloud, right? And the reasons for that, I believe, are pretty obvious. First, you have the ability to scale without having to deal with costly server upgrades. Let's say, for example, you have a large organizational event in the shop floor, like having a new product line or a new sites or new users. And whereas with the cloud platform, with the microservices model, organizations have the capability to scale quite easily. And another reason that pops up into my mind is cloud is a perfect scenario because you will have a system or a platform that is always on, always up, and always up to date. So this trend that we are seeing throughout the customer base we work with, it's going without a doubt to accelerate and continue in the future. Yeah.
Aido, I tell you one thing, 75% by 2030, I think it will be more sooner. But anyway, we don't want to argue with analysts today. So.
Absolutely, and that's what we are seeing with our customer base, exactly. Now, the other large trend in this transformational change is the concept of an open ecosystem. And I have to say that what I see is that this is becoming kind of an expectation for any new piece of technology or software that you add to your industrial tech stack. And it must be able to communicate with other systems, right? You cannot just buy something that you know upfront that you are not going to be able to connect easily. So this idea or this era that we have seen in the past of having this vendor lock-in to a particular platform or to a particular communication protocol are way behind us. And what we are really seeing is this open ecosystem concept being adopted, not just by industrial customers, but also the technologies itself, the vendors, they are providing tools and platforms that are open, or in other words, able to be integrated with other systems. And nowadays, to be honest, it's like competitive edge to be able to say that you can plug and play to your existing tech stack and ensuring that you're really going to focus your budget, your brain power in actually solving problems and not just integrating these systems between each other, right? And that could happen through open APIs or following some of the standard industrial protocols. All of these concepts are part of this open ecosystem idea. And again, we are seeing this over many different industries in operations under the MES space.
I think, Aido, maybe one more thing from my side. I think what's also very pivotal in these composable principles is that you could do one use case at a time. So one use case at a time is there is no need for kind of a big bang go live. And we all know that this is very risky because if things go wrong, then everything goes down. So with this composable approach, with the example I described before, you could say, I'm going to fix one problem at a time. And this is what we traditionally at Tulip call emerging MES. So instead of rolling out everything is in one shot, you have different components going up. So you achieve the same goal, but in a much faster way. And this is what we have today. But I would, I will not speak about AI for now, but we'll come back to this in a few minutes. Right? I'll let you carry on. Sorry.
Absolutely. And you mentioned AI, and nowadays it's impossible for us to present a webinar or to talk about operations without mentioning AI, at least a couple of times. So I think we are leaving the point of this massive enthusiasm around these AI tools to actually start using them as a valuable tool in industrial operation environments. With Gen AI being able to be an accelerator and compose things like work instructions, SOPs, batch records, calibration or inspection procedures are kind of becoming a key element of this composable MES concept. And these tools, as they get spread throughout our lives inherently, it is expected that we will be able to ask the same questions from our manufacturing data on how to solve all kinds of shop floor daily problems. And the principle is the same. Whatever search queries or prompts people are putting these days in cloud, ChatGPT, and ones alike for personal things, they will want to be able to search and get answers fast from the technology they are using in their professional life as well. And there is absolutely no reason why your manufacturing data should be siloed away from these tools. We're seeing this more and more, and I expect this trend to kind of only continue from here. And in my opinion, it's just going to be one more pillar in democratizing innovation on the shop floor as we put these highly technical tools into the hands of people that can really get value out of them. And so speaking of it, Olivier, I believe you referred something to me the other day about FDA and AI. Maybe it's worth sharing with the audience today.
Sure. Actually, there were a very interesting press release from the FDA explaining how they are using AI today and how they want to kind of double down on AI. So I would say if the FDA is leading the pack, then there is something wrong, I would argue. So we at Tulip, for instance, are already using agentic capabilities into the platform. Of course, it's only the start of this journey. But think about an agent that would support your validation team to basically say that your app is doing what it should do. So it's like complete, it's properly translated. There are no like dead leaves into this tree that the app is navigating. So it's the very beginning, but exactly as you said, I think we're getting used to use AI more and more at home. I have kids. I think they use it even more than me. But it's going to come to work. There is no way around this. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe I could say a few words about this. Yeah. So if you think the world is going too fast, I would say buckle up, because it ain't slowing down. So what we see is a more and more volatile environment. So whether it's for geopolitical reasons or because there's no technology out there. Look at these press releases. Yeah, we're not even halfway into the year. Those are like 3-4 months old, and there's a drastic shift happening right now in the industry. Yeah, so we see more and more greenfields. So that's for the benefit of the patients, of course. But if you were to build a new site today, I don't think you want to rely on the technologies on the 70s, 80s, 90s. I think you want to use the latest and greatest. And particularly because there's an appetite in this particularly cell and gene segment for like cobots and AI and more agile platform and so on and so on. Yeah. So I think this illustrates what Composable is from maybe a more functional perspective. So for me, that sounds easy and simple to do. Maybe you explain us in more details how you actually do it, practically.
Yeah. I just want to add something on top of this. So despite the fact that this information that we are sharing right now is very recent, another very important aspect of this is the fact that in the last years, we had a lot of, let's call it black swan events, and that required from organizations a lot of resilience, flexibility, and change. And it makes me think that being prepared to overcome and adapt quickly to all of those challenges makes ability to change kind of the new normal and actually a huge competitive advantage.
Right.
Okay. So let's now talk about composability. Composability is a word that gets thrown a lot these days. So I want to take a few moments here to actually bring it back to the basis by asking, what does composability mean and how can it actually help you? In order to answer those questions, let me take a step back here and explain to you what I usually do when I engage with our customers. I usually share a diagram like this, like the one that is being presented. And I always like to start by asking my customers, what is an MES? And follow up that question with, take your concept of what an MES is and go and circle the bubbles in the diagram that actually fit that box that you have predefined as an MES. And what this diagram really does is kind of show the challenges that a manufacturer faces, the challenges that exist in an operations environment. And this is across industries, not only in life sciences, by the way. So the challenges that you face are inherently overlapping and interconnected. And an example we can think about is if we look at the chart and think about, for example, line clearance or changeover. And actually, I just realized that Olivier will share a specific example, a real case about that later, which is going to be helpful to understand this. So, line clearance. We have a procedure to be completed in our operations that needs to be done before we launch our next batch or order, and the execution of that procedure, as well as every operator sign-off, needs to be automatically recorded in history or batch records for full traceability. At the same time, any deviation found throughout the execution of this procedure immediately invokes a review by exception workflow, right? And if these are divided amongst different systems, amongst different point solutions, it's going to be very hard to be able to make these connections and understand how you need to make your operations better. Okay, I think trying to have a lot of point solutions to solve some of these specific issues you may have kind of goes against the reality of the environment that most companies are actually operating in. Okay, and the interesting part about this, when we look at our customer base today that is using Tulip, we see that more than half of our customers have more than 10 of these use cases in production. And that means that maybe they are solving, for example, employee and operator training along with e-logbooks and deviations management, instructions management, EBR or EDHR, review by exception, all within the same platform, all within Tulip. And even more interesting than that, close to 90% are solving what I call non-traditional MES use cases in Tulip. And that could be something like an EHS audit to monitor the use of safety equipment. It may also include managing the inventory for the safety equipment, or even performing maintenance operations and execution, all inside Tulip. Okay?
Right.
So let's now start understanding this concept of composability in more detail with this visual representation of a shop floor, which, by the way, in my opinion, is a poor representation of what a shop floor is, because we all know that the shop floor is not static, but rather an ever-changing dynamic place. And in fact, there's no manufacturing shop floor in the world that is static at all. But again, this is just to make the point that what you see here is just one representation, but in reality, every single shop floor is different. And actually, on a personal note, I've had the privilege, to visit dozens, if not hundreds, of shop floors in my career. And one thing you come to understand is that, yes, you see a lot of things that might look and feel similar visually, but the way they operate, the way they communicate, the priorities, the goals, and how the product moves from one place to the other, how data and what data is recorded, how machines are integrated, is all fundamentally different. Okay? So when we think about what a composable solution is, in practice, it's really addressing the overall business objectives that you have, but tailored and configured to the environment, the people, the position in the facility that you're actually in, okay? And we need to always bear in mind that there are end users that will be interacting with the system. So the system needs to serve them and not the other way around, okay? For example, going back to our static representation of our shop floor, we have many different areas of a factory, and how a particular frontline worker interacts with a solution for buffer and media is going to be fundamentally different from how a frontline worker will interact with the solution for upstream operations. And so what we really want in a composable solution is that the actual applications are designed to be a true digital twin of that particular physical environment that our users are working in, all in service of a larger strategic business objective to actually solve real problems, therefore driving productivity. Okay, and this is very important to understand.
So I like your comment, by the way, Aido. Sorry to interrupt, but I like your comment, by the way, about the system serving the operator, not the other way around. I mean, my experience has been so far that it's not always like this. So, being a bit more human-centric is, even with AI these days, it feels good,
But it's very interesting because it's what the academics tells us, it's what the reality tells us, and somehow there are still some organizations that are missing this, which is very interesting to address and research. So after this first example that I've shared, or I've shared what composability may look like and how we can recognize composability in the field, let's now deep dive into the clear definition of what it is. So I'm presenting right now a framework that is very useful in many aspects. One of them being that you can actually use it to assess whether your existing solution and your existing technology is composable or not. Okay, so composability at its core has 5 pillars and those pillars move composability from a vague term in something actionable to identify if something is or not composable. Okay, very important to understand as well is all 5 pillars need to exist in your solution in order for it to be composable. Okay, this is very important. So let's start with the first pillar, bottom up. Bottom up talks about how a solution is implemented and how it evolves. Okay, when you implement a composable solution, you don't do it top down. Okay, that's typically how you implement a monolithic system or a solution. Composable tells you to go to the specific problem in the shop floor, one area or one station or one specific line at a time, and you start to solve the problem for that specific line, for that specific area, for that specific station, in the specific use case that it needs. Okay, so let me give you an example. If you go to a line and the line needs digital work instructions, you create and apply digital work instructions for that specific line, station by station on the line. That's how you achieve composability bottoms up. Okay, and that's pillar number 1. Now, the question that we should be asking is, can we do it? Meaning, if I go to an MES vendor and ask, can I go to my first station on the line and within a few hours create a solution for my first station? If the answer is yes, then you're on the right track. Okay? The next pillar is agility. Again, very important concept that brings together what we know as lean in manufacturing operations. And I believe it's fair to say that we all know what lean is. Lean is how production is running. Okay, operational excellence is how we create manufacturing systems that are optimal. It was coined by Toyota and it exists everywhere. It's a given. Okay, there is no manufacturing company in the world that will tell you, no, lean is something that is not for us. Lean is a thing, operational excellence is a thing, and that's how we run manufacturing. Hence, the technology, okay, that we use in manufacturing as not only to align with our lean, our OPEX, and continuous improvement initiatives that we already have in motion, but also needs to support and augment it, okay? So agility means taking lean and making it an integral part of how we use technology. This is very important. The technology has to simply allow you to create continuous improvement cycles, augment and support them, and you should see the improvements through that. This is very, very important. If it doesn't do it, if it constrains it in any way, you're basically putting a barrier for productivity, when part of going digital is, of course, to increase productivity. All right? Now, pillar number 3, democratization, one of my personal favorites. And I would like to emphasize first that sometimes democratization has a different terminology and is known sometimes as citizen development, but it's important to understand that democratization is much more than only citizen dev. Okay, democratization is about empowering people that run your manufacturing plant and the ability to use technology for their own benefit, meaning that the technology is simplified and is accessible to everybody on the shop floor. You don't have to go to experts to help you use the technology and so forth. Okay, so actually, let me pause here for a couple of seconds and let's think about a simple scenario. A plant manager that needs to go to experts for them to create reports about specific data. This is not democratization. The plant manager should always be able to open the system, look at the data, use the data, create personal analysis, charts and reports for a presentation and so forth, okay? This is democratization, and it lowers the barrier entry into bringing these technologies in. So the question now that we should ask the MES vendors should be, who's going to do the implementation for me? Who's going to develop this for me? If the answer is something like, oh, we have integration specialists and IT experts in the product, you don't need to worry about this, versus it's up to you to decide, because with this particular system, you are enabled to implement the technology in an autonomous way. That's an example of democratization. Okay? 4th pillar, another one of my favorites, human-centric. It means making the frontline workers, which are the people that are actually doing the work, more productive. We talk about technology that serves the frontline workers, like I said before, and not the frontline workers worried to serve the technology, okay? If you have a system where the frontline worker is doing the work that he or she knows best, and they need to pause what they are doing to go over a screen and tell the system what they just did, that's not human-centric, okay? It needs to be an integral part of how the frontline worker is doing their job, and this can be as simple as being able to create content that is visually appealing, meaningful for the end user, but it can also mean that it allows you to build much more complex scenarios, such, for example, configuring a vision camera to identify defects, or to integrate with wearables to make the frontline workers' daily operations more efficient. Okay, a simple example of this, which is, in my opinion, trivial, is instead of having a touch screen in front of the operator to move to the next step, for example, let's say we decide to use a foot pedal. So we want to have a foot pedal on the floor so that our operators have their hands free so they can do what they do best, okay? Now, in reality, how easy it is for us to put a foot pedal on the floor that the frontline worker can press to make the system react to something without a very heavy integration, okay? And this is the type of questions that we should be asking ourselves, is what are the systems that enable us to implement something that was decided out of a brainstorm session, out of the creativity that the people that are usually on the floor are telling us to do, okay? Now, last but not least, we have the 5th pillar, which is compliance. And I believe all of us attending this webinar are very familiar with it, and because it's very unique to life sciences industries. And as you know, compliance in some industries is a huge barrier to technology adoption. And any kind of composable system has to make the compliance seamless, has to minimize the effort of compliance, and has to have built-in compliance features. And this is a topic, if you want to deep dive into what Tulip does regarding this matter, we have specific webinars that discuss this. So I highly recommend the ones that are interested in this topic to go to our website, and they can pull the recording from the webinar that we did about compliance and validation. Okay. Now that we have the 5 pillars, we need to put them together in a framework. And that's what we are sharing in the diagram. Okay, we need to put them in a framework, but we also need to remember that we need to connect to the real world. Okay, and why? Because any digital technology that we use every day is connected to the real world. It's as simple as that. Think about your mobile phones. We have GPS trackers, then we have watches or rings that are measuring temperature, so having temperature sensors, they have heartbeat sensors, and so forth. Plus the fact that based on that data from those devices that are very easy to integrate with your phone, you can receive back feedback, okay? So you have to be connected, and in a manufacturing environment, we need to be connected to the physical world and the systems that are around us. It's the same principle, okay? Now, of course, I know that any given manufacturing plant is almost never going to be new. I believe last time I checked, the average age of technology, including machines, is roughly 20 to 25 years old. So we have to connect to all of this stuff, okay? And connectivity is a huge part of being composable, okay? The other thing that you see in this framework is, of course, digital maturity, which means already are we, as an organization, both technically and organizationally, for example, from a culture perspective, to adopt these new technologies, okay? Being a mature organization in this field is an immense importance, okay? And this is really, 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 really important. Now, bringing all of these together, we have enabling technologies like being in the cloud, like I mentioned before, being in the cloud as an infrastructure, which is kind of a given. Then connecting to the edge and having edge components in your architecture that allow to do that. And obviously, like we said before, the cognitive aspect that we talked about earlier. AI and the AI revolution is here. And in my personal academic and professional opinion, of course, this was the universal trigger point that really made us all enter in a new industrial revolution phase. Therefore, AI must be embedded in the system of your selection and needs to be used to give and to give back value that are needed both from a business perspective, but more important from a frontline worker perspective, okay? With this being said, and maybe it's time to understand what this results into, okay? And the answer is very simple. It results in time to value, as simple as that. At its core, why are we so interested in digital transformation? Why is all of this new stuff so interesting for us? From a manufacturing perspective, it's not because technology is cool, because technology will always be cool, okay? It's because everyone, even at a C-level, has recognized that this is an order of magnitude change in productivity, okay? An order of magnitude change in productivity, very important. And if we adopt these technologies, we are going to be not single digit, but double or even triple digit more productive than we were before. And this is really a paradigm change. It means that if you do not adopt these technologies and you don't have the adaptability you need to deal with the market trends that are going up, you may not survive as a company and as a business. Reality is not as kind as we would like it to be, okay? So very important, speed is very, very important. Okay.
Ac-
Go ahead. Olivier.
Yeah, sorry, Aido. I was going to say, actually, every time I see these slides, I'm like, okay, I spent my career speaking in years. And, every time I hear weeks, I'm like, did you say weeks? But did you mean months? And,
Yeah.
Tulip, honestly, proved me wrong here. I was skeptical at first, but, I'm okay with that. Yeah. So speed is key. Yeah. So.
And that's exactly it, because when you take a bottom-up approach on projects, and you have that experience, I have that experience, typically the time scale for a monolithic system is measured in months and years. So it takes a long time to have something running. And I assume many of the people in the audience also have this experience as well. We need to wait a lot of time. And in the end, we are not 100% sure that we have done the right thing for the reality we have in the moment that we are going to implement the system. Okay, and this goes into the direction of what I said in the beginning of this webinar. Right. Manufacturing operations are alive, they are not static. What you have today might not be the same in the near future. So if you look back, you just wasted a lot of months or years for something that it's not suitable to be deployed. Okay, now, if we think about a composable system, you start to get value much, much faster. You do a small pilot, you start small, and within weeks, you have something running in your manufacturing plants. And actually, later, we will talk about some examples of this. But this is just to prove the point that this is not a fairy tale. This is happening. And we, in Tulip, we see this happening all the time with our customers. And again, if you take anything away from this webinar is, first of all, start asking questions, the ones that I've shared before, but also questions like, how fast can I start getting value? If your vendor is telling you that this will take months and years, they are not composable, okay? Composability, projects deployed with composable solutions must be measured in hours, days, maximum weeks, depending on the complexity of the use case, to start getting value. We are not talking about hours, days, and weeks to deploy a system. We are talking about hours, days, and weeks to get value out of the system, okay? So my recommendation is that you need to start having a bias on speed in order to be better and faster than your competitors, okay? So now, taking the initial view that I was sharing before and kind of zooming in a little bit, let's take some seconds to analyze this example that I'm sharing. And this is an example of what a composable solution looks like in terms of deployment and planning, okay? I think that something that we need to understand is that with a composable solution, you really have the ability to scale both vertically and also horizontally, okay? That may mean that, for example, you start with logbooks for your specific line or specific site, but then after you do that first deployment, you can reuse that logbook application in other sites. So we are scaling horizontally, okay? And it could be focusing in one particular site where we have one production line and we want to scale up more use cases. Like we start with logbooks, and then for the same specific line, we will start to implement the solution for EBI, okay? Hence this vertical integration and deployment, okay? One thing that is very important is everything begins with defining and planning the initial scope, okay? First thing is understanding your business objectives and the problems you aim to solve, okay? And then, most important is, rather than forcing your existing operations to be molded around to fit a conventional software solution, instead, you should select a tool or a technology that has the flexibility to align with your specific needs and processes, okay? And it's really having a first principles approach of what are my business needs today, what's the environment I'm operating in, what the future looks like, what do I need to improve to increase margins, for example, to increase my throughput, to meet customer demands, and mapping all of that to use cases that are going to actually help solving those problems. Okay? And I feel like I've been talking since forever, so maybe we should take a look now to some real examples out of many. Olivier, do you mind kicking it off?
Yeah, sure, no worries. So thanks, Aido, for all these very insightful points. I would say that sounds simple enough. But the question is it possible? I would say, well, if you wanted to be the first one, you'll be too late. Yeah, but anyway, better late than never. So we had to negotiate, and I was a little bit heartbreaking with our marketing team, a small selection of use cases. We're going to zoom into the two bottom ones. So the one to the left is a large enterprise life sciences company. To be honest, it's one of the top 10, if not top 5. Aido, I think it would be best if you say a few words on Sharp. But before we move on, maybe a special one, which is very close to my heart for many reasons, including personal reasons, is Novo Nordisk. So Novo Nordisk, just to give you a bit of context, is a customer with who we started working about 5 years ago. We built a logbook app. Actually, it's a logbook app suite. We went live with about 10 operators. And within 18 months, couple of years, we scaled that to up to 7,000 users. Honestly, I had no idea at start that will go that big. So very, very interesting use cases with Novo here. But let's speak a bit more about these other customers of ours. So it's a bit of a classic, I would argue. So they have a complex equipment line changeover procedure based on paper, of course, because that was a bit of a misfit or a bit in the cracks for their legacy MES. Now, if you ask me what we mean by complex, I would say, honestly, it's just marketing because yours will feel as complex as theirs. It's a little bit business as usual. And they look at a monolithic MES, their legacy MES, and to be honest, I would say user interface was not very modern, and therefore the user experience was not great. On top of that, one of the classic challenges that comes with these systems is that it's pretty hard to build things, then it's pretty hard to validate those, so it takes time, and they didn't want to spend time building all that, so they looked for something that could go much faster, as Aido explained before. So if you look at how it was before, I would say Tulip, pretty simple, complex, I would say SOPs for operators to navigate or understand. So think about onboarding new people for the site, for the line. You're not speaking weeks or days here. You are more likely speaking months before people are kind of like, on autopilot. They know what to do. It was not, cheap. I would say rather expensive and time consuming to perform those tasks. And the interesting thing as well is they didn't have too many details. So they knew that the changeover would be a few hours. But why? Is it because something was not executed properly, or because the SOP was not right, or difficulties or whatever? It was not very clear. So definitely went for a composable solution, which is made of basically a central dashboard in which you could have real-time visibility into what's going on the lines, not just one line, but on the lines. It also was used to dispatch the work to different teams across the shifts. For the operators, the user experience is pretty simple. It's like a digital work instruction, so you are guided to perform tasks, and it's you have a pool of tasks, and you pick and choose, or you could return things into the pool, working with your teammates. And of course, along the lines, you record everything for free, I would say. So that gave them very insightful data into what to do to make this better. So long story short, it was a drastic reduction of the time it took to do a changeover. If my recollection is correct, it's about 2 to 3x the original time. And they had lots of real-time data that started this continuous improvement. Yeah, it was not just like a version of the next, but it was like they started thinking different, and they evolved their process for the changeover. If you take a bit of distance from that experience, which was very successful, there is also something interesting, like Aido mentioned before, about validation as a pillar. Yeah, definitely something you cannot ignore. is the way they approached it. So what they did is they validated the platform to be, of course, a GXP. So Tulip is pre-validated, and you can just build on top of that. And then what they also realized is that some sites or for some lines, they will have to extend the apps. So they have this risk-based approach on how much testing and validation you need to perform within the apps. So I'm not going to go into the details of that today, but that's definitely something you can reach back to us and we can elaborate further on a one-on-one basis if needed. So what was the outcome at the end? Well, they basically deployed that to 18 sites in about 3 months, and we're speaking about 150 packaging lines running Tulip today for this changeover. So that's also pretty exciting because next year they want to add 6 more sites. So I don't know what the 150 will be, but that will definitely be a big number. Maybe Aido, I guess you recovered a little bit. So maybe it's time for you to go back to work and talk about Sharp.
Let's talk a little bit about Sharp. So Sharp Packaging, for those of you that don't know Sharp, they provide contract packaging and clinical trial supply services. And they had major challenges with their secondary packaging processes. It was labor intensive, time consuming, and it was linked to increased costs and also with a reduced efficiency. Of course, another very important challenge for that Sharp had was the lack of real-time visibility, and they had a really overwhelming, fragmented compliance audit trail, which was directly influencing their ability to scale and was also prone to risks regarding regulatory compliance. Now, the question that you may be asking is, what have they done? And what was their composable solution when they started using Tulip? So they have started to implement digital work instruction apps, which were very visual, step-by-step guidance, enforcing that the right things happen in the right moment in time for assembly, labeling, and documentation purposes. Then they also had apps for guided quality inspection, where they have connected devices to scan barcodes for digital verification and data capture. And they also have, on top of this, automatic logs for every action. So they got real-time reports for monitoring, traceability, and identifying common errors that were happening on the shop floor, which allowed them to have the insights that they were looking for to drive continuous improvement. And at the same time, because they were using a composable solution, they were also driving continuous transformation. And of course, because this is a life science customer of ours, they got a digital audit trail. Okay, and the results, talk a little bit about the results. Well, they now have a 30% faster process. So they have reduced friction for clinical trials. They have reduced the training time. And at the same time that they have improved quality compliance and traceability with this shift from paper records to a more electronic record situation. Okay, and what they also got, and this is something that sometimes it's hard to measure, they also had an enhanced agility, meaning ability to customize, configure, and change their packaging process to different customers. So now, using Tulip as a tool, they can easily adapt the digital solution that they have to accommodate changes in their real packaging lines. Okay, so Olivier, I think I will toss now the ball to you again for us to do a wrap up, because I'm excited about the Q&A.
Sure. So let's wrap up real quick before we jump into that. Yeah. So I think one of our key messages is think beyond MES. So I would say don't forget that EBR or EDHR is just a point solution in an MES landscape. I think that's one takeaway. The second thing which we would like to say is maybe start small but think big. So what could be the end goal? Like a paperless fab, but maybe something else. The other one is I think Aido said quite a few words about empowering local problem solver. Our experience tells us that the closer you are to the problem solver, the better you are. You definitely don't want to be in a position where you have some team writing some ERS, wondering if they ever visited the site, that you want to help. So, don't do it. Maybe empower citizen developers. And then the last one, which is also pretty interesting, is many people speak about digital transformation, but we at Tulip would argue that you need to think about continuous transformation because there is no end point. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we gave you this example of a packaging use case. They didn't stop there. They keep going, and they will keep going. Yeah. So think like that. What can you do next? Like Aido said, your shop floor, your enterprise, your environment is dynamic by nature. So what are you going to do? Like stop in the middle and wait that nothing will change too much? Well, that's how you kind of start lagging behind. Yeah. So think different, and do it like this. So with that being said, I think we're about on time to open now for the Q&A.
Thank you, Olivier and Aido. We do have a few questions lined up from the audience.
Sure.
The first question is, for established pharma companies with legacy MES systems, what's the most practical first step they can take towards adopting a more composable approach?
Right. I think it's a simple one, but at the same time, it's also a hard one. So instead of answering the question, maybe I would share experience with what we've seen from, I would say, our life sciences customers. So first, you could divide the world in non-GXP and GXP. So anything which is like OE, KPIs, comparing sites, comparing shifts, and so on, you could argue this is not necessarily GXP. So we've seen many customers who started from, I would say, that side, basically doing things like collecting data to get better insight into their operations. So that's kind of a good starting point for them. If you look on the other side, on the GXP side, many customers are actually using logbooks, or let's say doing their logbooks in Tulip, because it is a lot of paper. And once it's on paper, what do you do with the data? Well, it's on paper, so it's hard to use. So those are usually the kind of use cases that we see. But the reality is like, people are very creative with what they do in Tulip. And I would say the best way to answer this question from my perspective is to look at it from a value perspective. So usually what we do is we do a bit of a quadrant. We say easy, high return investment. You want to stay in the easy, high return investment. Don't go into the hard and low return investment kind of box. Yeah. And then, it depends on your facility, it depends on your goals, and what you want to achieve. Yeah. So I hope that answered the question. I don't know if we have a dialogue with the audience. If it doesn't, again, you can reach back to us afterwards and we can elaborate on those. Yeah. I don't know, Aido, if you want to say something else. But
a couple of things, because it's very important what you mentioned, but also it's very important to understand first, and this is a tangible, actionable item that you can take from this, is to understand your business objectives.
Right.
And then even if you have a legacy system, we are not telling you to replace, we are not telling you to do a big bang approach. Most of the situations I've been dealing with, the MES system is there, but has gaps. So, and Tulip being so flexible, we can start by influencing the results toward the business case, but by filling the gaps so that you don't have a disruptive change. And once you know what Tulip is capable of doing, I'm pretty sure that you will continue to build on top of these gapped use cases that you have found until you have Tulip as your MES in the future.
All right.
Great. So we have a couple of additional questions to dig into. Another is, you mentioned starting small and scaling fast. What are the considerations for a company to ensure that their initial small solution can actually scale effectively across multiple sites or lines? Aido, do you want to take this one? This sounds like your bread and butter.
Absolutely. So there are not a standard recipe that we can give to our customers, because like we said in the beginning, in Tulip, we are all about adapting to what the customer wants to. Nevertheless, we can provide some recommendations regarding this. If you want to start small and scale fast, one of the things that for sure is assessing what processes are similar, what are the areas that are similar. And it then is a matter of understanding, okay, as a strategy point of view, of course, Do I want to scale horizontally first? Do I want to scale vertical first? Do I want to do all at once? And this nuanced approach towards the strategy to implement and deploy a digital solution is very important to consider, okay? In Tulip, we are not expecting you to come up with this without support, of course. We are here to support and to give you advice in the best practices from what we have seen in the industry. But usually, if you want to start small and scale fast, we recommend doing a POV, because part of what the best practices towards digital transformation tells us is that we should try, test, iterate, and try again until we find a path moving forward in this journey. Because like Olivier said, continuous transformation, digital transformation is not a project. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. It's an ever-going thing that we need to do if we want to stay in the market.
Yeah, actually, I could double click on the Novo Nordisk example, yeah, because honestly, at Novo, we built one logbook app, so one app. Then we created one master data app because you have to basically declare your assets that you want to clean. And then you had a review app in which quality can go and confirm that everything is okay, or if it's not, then do the right things. Yeah. So at the end of the day, 3 apps, not even 3 months to build and validate. But like I said, we scaled very well. They actually, I have to give them the credit. They scaled very fast. Yeah. So 7,000 users. I've never seen that in like 18 months, 2-ish years. That was like pretty crazy, I would say, per my standards. So yeah, I think it's not just slides, it's real projects.
Right. Okay. I think we have time for one more question. Could you elaborate on how composability benefits pharma manufacturers in meeting regulatory and market demands, especially with the emergence of new technologies like ATMP?
Well, I can give you a very short answer. My experience with the projects we did in cell and gene ATMP like processes is very often people look at the monolithic MES and they say it won't work for me. It just won't work for me because I don't think like this. I don't operate like that. I need flexibility. I cannot wait for months for a change. Like I need to do this. Obviously, your system has been bastardized to be biotech from its OSD roots. What do I do now? It just doesn't work for me. So with Tulip, like Aido explained before, the perspective is user-centric. So now you could sit down with the operator, who's usually are like PhD-like operators, and say basically, what do you do? How do you prepare the room? How do you prepare the material? How do you do the seeding of this in a bioreactor? How do you set it up? How do you ensure that the VCD, the viable cell density is all right, and the pH and so on? So it's just like different, so you need to have the right tool for doing this. So I think that would be my answer to this question. Yeah, it's like you need the technology, and yeah, maybe Tulip is the technology you need. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. And just to add on top of that, Olivier, I still remember back in the day when I was in shop floors, and the main problem is when you have a system, the system is rigid. You know what you need to do, you need what the system needs to be, and you need to wait or contact the vendor or contact your IT team. And at least for me, I am an engineer, so what I want is to solve problems. And often, what we do as engineers in shop floors is let's open an Excel file and let's use Excel to do what we need because it's a tool that is available, flexible, and we can do whatever. And that's when I found Tulip. So because I could do the exact same things, but better in a more compliant and regulated way than I was doing in an Excel spreadsheet back in the day.
Yeah. Contacting the vendor on this shop floor is the easy part. Getting an answer is a little bit harder. But anyway.
And having the solution implemented is also very costly, and sometimes it's not what we asked for.
Yeah, let's not go there. Let's keep it a nice discussion for now.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you to Olivier and Aido again for a great discussion. And thank you so much to everyone who attended. As a reminder, the recording will be sent out to your email. If you have any other questions, feel free to fill out the contact form on our website in the meantime, and someone from Tulip will follow up or reach out directly to our sales team. Thanks again and have a great day.